everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Alex and today I am so excited to finally be premiering a brand new series on my channel that I am calling Backlist Breakdown. And today we're going to be focusing on the works of Libba Bray. So I've had the idea for this backlist breakdown series for a long time, even before I started my channel. The point of these videos is that each one is going to be focusing on a specific author, and I am going to have read every single book that that author has put out. So my goal is to hopefully do one of these like every other month. I'm hoping that I can keep up with a schedule like that. I have several authors that I'm not quite there yet, but almost where I've read their entire backlist. So hopefully I'll be able to keep these coming out on a semi-regular basis. So today's video is going to be focusing all about the works of Libba Bray. I'm going to start by giving you just like kind of a brief biography on Libba Bray and a little bit about her, the signature style that she tends to write in, maybe how she got into writing, and then I'm going to go into a brief description and review of every single novel that she has published. Now I will say for these videos, I do not plan to discuss any anthologies that the author has been involved in. Anthologies aren't really my thing, so I don't tend to read a lot of them, and they're just individual stories from these authors, so I am going to be focusing just solely on their novels. And I also don't plan to focus on any novellas that any of these authors have written. So if an author has written a series with, say, 3 base novels and they've written 3 side novellas that go with them that you can read but you don't have to, I'm not going to be focusing on those. I'm just going to be focusing on their main novels that they have published. So before we get into it, if you are new here and you're not already, be sure to go down and hit the subscribe button as well as the bell icon so that you never miss out on any of my content. So without further ado, let's get started. So starting with just a brief biography background on Libba Bray. Libba Bray was born in Montgomery, Alabama on March 11th, 1964. She kind of moved all around during her childhood, but she wound up in Texas, which is where she went to high school and graduated. And then 3 weeks after high school graduation, she was actually involved in a very serious car accident. Her face needed complete reconstruction. She went through 13 surgeries over 6 years, and she actually has an artificial left eye because of the accident. She then attended the University of Texas at Austin and graduated from there with a degree in theater in 1988. After graduating from college, she wound up moving to New York to room with her best friend that was already living in Manhattan, and her first job was at Penguin Putnam in the publicity department. After that, she went to a company called Spire, which is an advertising agency for book publishers, and she was there for 3 years. Now, before she started writing novels under the name Libba Bray, she actually wrote under a pseudonym. She produced 3 novels for a romance publishing house called 17th Street Press. Now, Libba Bray's husband, Barry Goldblatt, is a children's book agent, and Jenny Seo, who is an editor at Simon & Schuster, both got with Libba Bray and encouraged her to publish a young adult novel. Then her first novel, A Great and Terrible Beauty, came out in 2003. She has since published that whole trilogy, 2 other standalone novels, and her Diviner series that is ongoing. As of today, Libba Bray still lives in New York City with her husband and their 15-year-old son. So Libba Bray does kind of a mixture of a bunch of different genres. She does some contemporary and some historical fiction. I think she's mainly focused on the historical fiction side, but most of her books tend to have some sort of supernatural, paranormal, fantastical element with them, so she is just really known for blending her genres. The works that she's most known for are her Diviners novels, and those are historical fiction with some supernatural elements. So now I'm going to go into discussing every single book that Libba Bray has ever published. I'm not going to go into the ones under her pseudonym because I don't even know what that pseudonym was, but I'm going to give you a brief description, tell you what I thought of them and the rating that I gave them, and then at the end I'll talk about some works that she's got coming up in the future. Now, her first 3 works I'm going to talk about together because they're all part of a series, and that is the Gemma Doyle trilogy. The first book, A Great and Terrible Beauty, was published in 2003. Book 2, Rebel Angels, was published in 2005. And Book 3, The Sweet Far Thing, was published in 2007. Now, A Great and Terrible Beauty is set in the year 1895, and it follows our main character, Gemma Doyle, who is living in India, but after her mother commits suicide, she goes to a boarding school in England. Now, Gemma has been having these visions of the future that are coming true, and they're kind of freaking her out. She's not really getting a warm welcome at her new school, and she is coming to find out that there is this boy that has been sent to follow her and watch her, and it just kind of goes on a wild ride from there. She gets into more paranormal things, chaos ensues. Now, this was actually the first book that I ever read from Libba Bray, and I was really happy with it. It has been about 4 years since I've read this novel, but I remember really enjoying it. I really enjoyed the time period. The pace of the novel was really good. All of the characters were really dynamic. They had their own personalities, and the story and the plot twists were all really unique and kept me wanting to read. I highly, highly enjoyed this first installment in the trilogy and was really, really looking forward to getting into the next few, so I ended up giving the first book a 5 out of 5 stars. Now, book 2, Rebel Angels, is a direct sequel, so I can't give a ton of synopsis without being spoilery, but it does continue to follow Gemma and her friends, this time at Christmas. Now, this book, in my opinion, did not fall into the second book slump that a lot of trilogies have. I feel like this book really progressed the plot nicely. Again, there were twists and turns that I liked, and it set up for a good finale, but I did go into this book knowing that the third book was 800 pages long, and at that point, before I had read the third book, I didn't know if a third book 800 pages long was going to be justified. So I wound up giving Rebel Angels a 4 out of 5 stars. Now, The Sweet Fur Thing, the third and final book in the trilogy, takes place a year after Gemma has arrived at her new school. Chaos is ensuing, circumstances are getting harder and harder, and everything is wrapping up in this third novel. Now, this book was my least favorite book in the trilogy. I thought that the plot twists weren't as intriguing or interesting as they were in the first two novels. I found that I kept getting lost, and I kept forgetting what we were actually aiming towards at the end of this story. And I will say it has been about 3 years since I completed this trilogy. I know that a lot of people have read this trilogy since I did, and there have been a lot of complaints about the representation in this book. I believe that there is quite a bit of fat shaming. It's been so long ago and I'm so far removed from the series that I personally don't remember. If that's something that you're interested in, I might look up some more recent reviews to see what people are saying to see if you actually want to go into this one. But like I said, this third novel was my least favorite in the trilogy, but it was an okay wrap up. I wound up giving it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Now, The Sweet Fur Thing was released in 2007, and 2 years later in 2009, she released her first standalone novel, which was Going Bovine. Going Bovine follows our main character, 16-year-old Cameron, who finds himself in the hospital with mad cow disease. He ends up meeting this angel named Dulcie, who tells him that she can find a cure for his mad cow disease, and he winds up going on this crazy adventure with other people that he meets in the hospital, as well as these other entities that you really have no idea if they're real or if he's just hallucinating from the drugs that he's on, and it's a wild ride. This is not my favorite of Libba Bray's novels, but for the entertainment value, it did what it wanted to do. It was entertaining. A lot of the story is you find yourself in one place, this fantastical element, you don't really know what's going on, but then it pulls you back into Cameron in the hospital, so you're left wondering if he's actually experiencing this or if it's just this drug-induced high. I felt like I was on a trip for the entire novel, which might have been the goal. If it was, she definitely succeeded in it. Like I said, this isn't my favorite of hers, but it was worth the read. I'm glad that I read it. It was just kind of middle of the road for me, and I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Now, in 2011, Libba Bray published her second standalone novel, which was Beauty Queens. I've heard Beauty Queens pegged as an all-female retelling of Lord of the Flies. I've never read Lord of the Flies, so I can't exactly make that comparison, but from what I know of Lord of the Flies, that would be pretty accurate. This book is the story of these 50 contestants in the Miss Teen Dream beauty pageant. They are on an airplane trying to get to the pageant, and their plane crashes, and they have to survive on this island. Now, I listened to the story on audiobook, and Libba Bray herself actually narrates it, and I think that she does an incredible job. She does a very, very nice job of all the different voices and the accents and everything to tell these characters apart. There are also commercials and footnotes that she reads throughout this novel, and there are sound effects, and all of it is just masterfully done. Now, as for the story itself, again, entertainment value alone, I was incredibly entertained while reading this book. It is pretty ridiculous, and it's a very, very obvious parody of the way that we treat women in society today. So if you're looking for a parody that's a little bit more nuanced, this is not the book for you. It's very blatant and very obvious, but it's really funny and it does get you thinking. So if you're looking for a fun audiobook that you can laugh out loud to, this is definitely one that I'd recommend, and I wound up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. And now we get into what Libba Bray is most known for and my personal favorite works of hers, and that is the Diviners series. This first book, The Diviners, came out in 2012, and this story follows our main character, Evie, in the year 1926, and she is sent from her hometown in Ohio to live with her uncle in New York City. Now, Evie has a special ability that she can touch an object and see the background behind it, see where it's been and who it's belonged to. And she winds up finding herself involved in a murder case that her uncle is working on, and she is hoping that her special power will help him to solve the case. I absolutely adore this novel and this entire series. I'll get a little bit more into the rest in a little bit. This series is 3 books long currently. There's one more to come, and I have listened to the audiobooks for all 3 of these. They are narrated by January Lavoie, and she does a phenomenal job. This series has a very, very large cast of characters, but the narrator does a beautiful job of keeping them all straight, and the author has done a very, very good job of giving them all their own individual personalities. Multiple people have different powers, and they are so cool. I cannot say enough good things about this book. This is the perfect read for fall time. I read all 3 of the books that are released last October. I listened to them all, and it was the perfect time to read them. I wound up giving this first book in the series a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Now, the second book in the series, Lair of Dreams, came out in 2015, and this one does follow all of our same main characters, but it mainly focuses on our 2 characters, Henry and Ling. Now again, I very, very much enjoyed this one. I think that this fell into a tiny, tiny bit of second book syndrome, but it had so many other great qualities that I was kind of willing to overlook that. There is a ton of diversity in this series of race, gender, sexuality, disability, everything that you can think of is in this series, and it is amazing, especially considering the time period that it's set in. This second book really helped to progress the plot along, and the writing was so good, the characters are amazing, and the stakes just get higher and higher. The one thing that I have really appreciated about this series is that all of the books have their own individual plots, and they still play into the big plot that is happening throughout the series that's going to be wrapped up in the final novel. I wound up giving Lair of Dreams a 4 out of 5 stars. And finally, the third book in this series is Before the Devil Breaks You, which was published in 2017. Now again, this book is just moving forward the plot of the series. We spend some time in a mental hospital in this book and introduce some more characters, which were really, really interesting. This book to me was by far the best book of the series so far. The characters got better, the plot twist got bigger, the plot itself just got, the stakes are raising higher and higher and higher. This book, in my opinion, is the best book that Libba Bray has put out so far of any of her novels. Just everything about this book is incredible. I am so glad that I wound up picking up this series last year. I'm thinking about rereading it again before the last one comes out, but obviously I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars, and it's my favorite book of Libba Bray's. Now, those are all the books that Libba Bray has published to date. As far as I know, she only has one other book that has officially been announced that she's going to be coming out with, and that is the 4th and final book to the Diviners series, which is The King of Crows. This book is scheduled to be released on February 4th of 2020, and I cannot wait for it. So that is it for my backlist breakdown of Libba Bray. Let me know if you like this series and if there are any specific authors that you want me to try to read all of their books so that I can do a feature on them. I am so excited to be doing this series. This is something that I've been thinking about for a really long time, and I'm excited that I can do it for you. So let me know if you have read anything from Libba Bray, what your favorites from her are, what your least favorites of hers are, any thoughts on her novels. Let me know all of that in the comments down below. If you like what you saw today, don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up, as well as hitting the subscribe button and bell icon below so that you never miss out on any of my content. So until next time, bye!